Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Inkwell Academy. My name is Sophia Wardell, and today we have a very special guest, fantasy author and editor Ariana Tosado. Ariana is the author of the fantasy novels Our Mistaken Identity, The Hunter in the Room, and Thy Kingdom Come. Ariana is also a freelance editor, book formatter, and writing mentor, helping fellow writers achieve their dreams. Thanks for joining us today, Ariana.
Thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be here.
It's wonderful to have you. And today I want to talk all about fantasy writing with you. So, Ariana, tell us, how can an author create immersive worlds and dynamic characters that bring your adventurous fantasy stories to life?
Well, the first step I found with my most recent release, it's a standalone, is to find a world and characters that you are in love with. This is the only reason I was able to hold on to this idea for 2 years. For me to finally have time to write it and bring it to fruition was because I was so in love with the concept and with the characters that I could already see for this that love really does take you a long way. It gives you the patience, it gives you the passion and the determination you need to bring something like this to fruition. So, very first step, fall in love with it. Find something that you are in love with so you are able to take the steps necessary to bring this to light. And I'd say the next step is to get to know everything. Get to know your characters, get to know the world that you're crafting, and really get to know the story, the themes behind it, what makes it so important. You really need to immerse yourself first. Your readers cannot be immersed if you yourself are not immersed in this world. And finally, really go outside of the box. Don't give yourself any constrictions, any restraints. This is the wonderful thing about world building and the stage of character creation. It has no limits. It can literally be anything that you want. So this is where I like to say, be a kid, play pretend with it. If you're having fun, your readers are going to have fun. So it is this stage is so wonderful because you're just in a sandbox of sorts. So really just have fun with it. Pretend that you're a kid and that you have these infinite possibilities to play around with like we did back then in our childhoods, because that's really what it is. Um, and yeah, fun. So being in love and having fun with it would be my takeaways for that.
I love that. It gets me A, excited about fantasy and B, wanting to wanting to jump in and write a book, that I can express myself
Exactly.
with, that I can be creative with. I mean, I think that's it's not only fantasy, the genre, but it's a big part of fantasy it makes it really special. Is you really can get out there and be very creative. Now, what would you say are some strategies that could be used to balance an action-packed plot, like a fantasy plot, with emotional depth?
I'd say that the very first step, though, to really help any writer with this, to look at it as a whole to make sure you have that balance going, is outlining. So with this standalone, I it was my very first time experimenting with outlining because I really loved to make things up as I went. That was how I had fun with it. But I really wanted this to be an adventure with that emotional depth. I knew that the story had a really heavy set of emotions to come with it to help readers connect with it all the more. So I decided I want what's best for it. I'm going to outline this, make sure it has everything it needs, first of all, before I can add all the bells and whistles. Outlining really helps you look at the story from or as one whole. And so what I did is I would outline and list these actions happening, this action scene happening, and I will plot out my conversations. Like after this fight scene happens, perhaps a character saves another character, and that will lead into a conversation that will build up relationship and friendships and establish some kind of emotional foundation that we're going to need later on in the story, so on and so forth. And that brings me to the next tip, which is to let scenes bleed in their own way, as in let scenes bleed into each other. This is very, very vital. You cannot have, I mean, yes, you're going to have all of these pieces individually, But where I think a lot of writers struggle with, and even I struggle with, even when I do outline, is we tend to have every piece a little too individual in our minds. So we want this to happen, we want this to happen. We know we want our characters to get to this point. So we're going to chop it all up into a bunch of little blocks. But then we forget that scenes really rely on each other and
Mm,
they work together to form the overall plot. And that's what makes a plot so strong is when it flows naturally. This is why we have writing mentorships and writing classes. There are entire books on how to create strong plots that naturally flow. Is when we let scenes, when I say let scenes bleed into each other, I mean let the next scene happen because the last scene happened, or even let this future scene happen because something way in the beginning of the book happened, the butterfly effect, so to say, or otherwise known as foreshadowing. This also leads me to getting good transitioning down. And I'd argue that this is just as vital as letting your scenes bleed. Good transitioning establishes that flow and lets the readers it turns the book into the ride that reading is, doesn't it? It makes
mm.
it so much easier to follow along with, and it really helps your readers, it pulls them along into the story in a natural and seamless way to where this is where they kind of forget that they are reading because you're lulling them into what happens next. So you really need good transitioning for your scenes and also for your characters' relationships and development for everything to sound and be natural and flow well, leading to that strong plot.
That's great advice. Now, in terms of contributing to that, how do you approach building high stake conflicts that keep readers engaged throughout the fantasy narrative?
Oh, really great question. I love it because I recently struggled with this with my last release. But I'd say where to start is with those dimensional characters, and that's why I really want to emphasize the importance of falling in love with your story, with your characters, everything about it before you start something like this. Because when you have these dimensional characters, you're going to get what is absolutely essential in every story, I firmly believe, which is internal conflict. So, first of all, a dimensional character will give a reader a friend, but an internal conflict will give a reader a character that they can connect with. And that is the key because that is what makes readers care about what will happen to this character and their story. So when you first lay down your dimensional character, you find their internal conflict, you've got a great foundation for making readers care about this character. And in terms of building high stakes, this is where we start to, okay, you care about this person? Great. What would you say if I took away everything that was comfortable for them? What if I took away everything that they loved, everything that they needed, and now they're just kind of flailing about and they need to survive somehow without this? Well, your characters or your readers are going to ask, why would you do that? What are they supposed to do? What's going to happen? Now they want to come along for the journey to see how they're going to survive. Because this is what makes a character relatable. I mean, going through life, we often have to go out of our comfort zones and outside of our normal boundaries. It's not very fun, but one of the beautiful things about human connection is that we can always know we are never alone in our struggles even if this person is fictional. So, in doing so, we create a relatable character that we can connect with. And so, for the sake of that character that we're so so attached to already because of that internal conflict, they feel like our friend, we want to experience their struggles with them, which is absolutely key.
Right.
I would also say give your characters for to really up the stakes. You got to give your characters no other choice but to do the scary thing, but to go down the yellow brick road leading into the really spooky forest. I think another great thing about human connection is that we tend to not want to let other people suffer alone. So our readers, even though it's going to hurt them, they're going to want to hurt with our characters too. Another
Right.
where I struggled with this in my last release is that I needed this thing to happen in the book, but I couldn't justify it to save my life. And I knew my readers were going to come for me for it. They're like, well, why didn't your character just be honest and open up about this? And I'm like, because I need her to not open up about it. This is
Right.
where best piece of advice I have for this, ask a friend, because that friend is the person who gave me who took away my character's choice in the matter. So now she wasn't keeping it because she chose to, but because she felt like she had to. And
Mm.
that's where you get high stakes.
Oh, that's great advice, Ariana. Thank you. And lastly, I just want to close with, could you share a little bit about your other creative endeavors, like your musical background, and how could you, or in your case, or somebody like an author with a musical background, how can that influence, say, rhythm, tone, and theme in their stories?
In my case, my musical background, of course, helped me become knowledgeable in rhythm and beat, and that transferred over to establishing a musicality in writing, bleeding a little bit into line editing here, if I may. This is where punctuation marks really change the game. They are why I think they're part of the reason we have different things like periods versus commas versus em dashes versus semicolons. It's like, yes, it's annoying, but it's also very they're able to create a very effective beat and rhythm for your writing rather than a cliche or cheesy beat. You, uh, like you gotta have that typical you did it Y/N, you did it, your name here. No, we did it. There are many different ways that you could phrase that, but also a lot of different ways that you can play with the punctuation and the musicality of that to create something brand new, a song that readers haven't heard of yet. And I believe that that's a beautiful thing about reading is that when we find a good book, it's because we haven't heard this song before. If you are a writer with musical ability, I would try as hard as possible to immerse your music into your book world. A great, fantastic example of this is a writer called Zach McDonald on Instagram. He just published, I believe, what is his debut. And part of the reason he got so popular was because he created a soundtrack for his book. And it wasn't just a soundtrack. I believe his magic system is built on music, is built on creating these songs. So that's what he did. He basically bridged fiction with the real world. And readers flocked to that. They ate it up. And in full honesty, I was very jealous because, yes, I have a musical background, but I am nowhere near at that. I am vocal, not the soundtrack part. So what Zach McDonald did, part of the reason he's so successful, is like I said, he created and established that connection between readers and his story, which enticed them to join because music is such a powerful tool. It's not only useful, but it's emotional. So, going back to that internal conflict that characters have that makes us relate to them and therefore connect with them, when we use music for that as well, we further build that connection we don't want to let go of as human beings. I think part of being human is feeling with our hearts, connecting with one another, and it feels rare in a world like today. So when we find it, we don't want to let it go. And in that case, we take advantage of music to find that in other people and to find that in a story. It's very comforting and it's beautiful.
Well, Ariana, thank you so much. That was wonderful insight on fantasy writing.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Lastly, where can our listeners find and connect with you?
My contact form on my website is most preferable. I'm guaranteed to see that. Otherwise, you can DM me on Instagram or TikTok, contact me through the comments of my YouTube channel. And I do have a LinkedIn, but I'm not very active on it. If you'd like any business endeavors, though, I'll be checking my LinkedIn from time to time.
That's all the time we have for today. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to today's interview with fantasy author and editor Ariana Tosado. Be sure to check out our website for more videos. Wishing you all a fulfilling and successful writing journey.